guys are probably laughing. I've recorded all of these on the same evening. And as you can see behind me, it continues to get darker and darker and darker. So I figure by the time I finish with this video, it's probably going to be completely dark outside. Okay, so it's Friday. That's the good news. Hopefully you're finished with all of your map testing, which is a big hooray for getting all of that finished. Today, we are actually going to look at two different standards. It's Friday. I figured we might as well be up for a challenge. So we're going to be looking at the third and fourth standards. I have emailed these out to you. There we go. I can't ever figure out where the camera is here. Okay, so I emailed these out to you just as we did on Monday and Wednesday. Hopefully you took some time and you've already worked through these. Because we're doing two today, I am going to move a little more quickly. I think from what I can understand by the data, most of you have a pretty good understanding of rounding, which is what the fourth standard is. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time there. And we'll move on through this and get you on your way for Friday. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, jumping in with our third standard for Friday. Question 1 asks us to write an expanded form. There's a couple of different ways that we can write an expanded form. I'm going to walk you through one of those versions. Okay, so here's our number, 796 and 384 thousandths. I'm actually going to work down the page. It's just easier to me. I'm going to start with my first place value, and so I know that's a 7 in the 1,000ths place. The next number, I have a 9, and it's in the tens, or I'm sorry, I said that was the thousands place. That's the hundreds place. Would help if I slowed down. Okay, so that's a 7 in the hundreds place. Then I'm going to add in a 9 in the tens place. And then I'm going to add in a 6 in the ones place. So that took care of all of my whole numbers. Now I'm going to move on to my decimals. So I know that this 3 is in the tenths spot. So this is going to be 3 times 1/10. Then this 8 is in the hundredths spot. So that's going to be, oops, that's an 8. Oh, look at that. I made that right into an 8. So 1/100th. And then this 4 is in the thousandths place. It's way down there in the thousandths place. So that would be 4 times 1/1000th. So that's how I would do expanded form. I am very partial to doing it in a straight line like this so it doesn't get all mixed up. Okay, number 2 over here says place these numbers in order from least to greatest. All right, so I will tell you once again, I work best going in a line up and down. I'm going to write these. So the first one here is 2 3/100ths, and then I have 2 3/10ths, and then I have 2 3/1000ths. So it asked me to order these from least to greatest. So I'm going to take a look first and figure out which of these is the smallest. Well, I see they all have a 2 in the ones place, so I'm just going to cross out that 2. Well, as I look through here, in the tenths place, I see that only one of these has a 3 in the tenths place. So I know that that is going to be the greatest. And I'm going from least to greatest. So this is going to be the greatest one here. I'm going to put a 3 out in here next to that because that'll be the third one. And then I can mark it out. And now I'm just dealing with these other 2. Okay, so I have a 0 and a 0 in the tenths place. I move over. Up here, I have a 3 in the hundredths and a 0 in the hundredths. Well, this one's going to have to be bigger than this one because this one has some hundredths. This one doesn't have any hundreds at all. It only has thousands. So this is going to be the littlest baby right here. So if I were putting these in order, I would start here with 2 and 3 thousandths, and then I would have 2 and 3 hundredths, and then 2 and 3 tenths. And it may take you a while. It may take you some extra work to write those out, but it is really difficult to do some of these in your head, especially if you have 5 or 6 and you have different whole numbers. It gets very confusing. Okay. This one says find 4 numbers that are between 22 hundredths and 23 hundredths, and put all 6 numbers in order from least to greatest. Okay, so if this up here is 22 hundredths, and then this down here is 23 hundredths, what in the world could come in the middle of these? Watch this. Here's a trick. I'm going to add an extra 0 out to the end of this one and this one. That does not change the value at all. But look what I can do now. So this number, 221 thousandths, comes in between there. 222 thousandths comes in between there. 223 thousandths comes in there. And here's another one. 224 thousandths also comes in there. I could keep going all the way until I could even put 229 thousandths in there. And then it asked me to put them in order from least to greatest. Well, mine are already in order just because of how I did that. So this is kind of a tricky question, but something that you could definitely figure out by just adding another place value. Okay, here's another one. Use the symbols greater than, less than, or equal to compare the decimals below. Then write to explain the answer you chose. Okay, well, once again, I really need to write these things out so that they are right next to each other, where the decimal lines up. Okay, well, looking at that, I can easily see they both have a 4 in the tenths place. This one down here has a 9 in the hundredths place. This one doesn't have any hundredths, so this one is going to be larger. So I'm going to go ahead and put that alligator mouth so that it opens toward the larger one. So we actually read this one, 409 thousandths is less than 490 thousandths. And then it asks to write why, and I could just say the decimal, let's see here, in the hundredths spots were different. I didn't start this off very well. Didn't have any hundredths, but the had, I could say, 9 hundredths. Okay. I could definitely work on that answer. That was not the best answer. But just understanding why one of those is larger than the other. Yes, even I have to think through the why of these sometimes, especially if I'm writing it out. Okay, here we go. Which digit is in the thousandths place in this number? Well, I have a hard time seeing it. So looking at that, to find the thousandths place, I know that this is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. It asked me which digit, so they're just asking for the number. So the answer here is going to be 7. Write the number 21,989 and 98 thousandths in expanded form and word form. Okay, expanded form would be where I wrote it down the side and I said 2 times, that's in the 10,000th spot, plus 1 times 1,000, plus, and I would keep going here. And then over here for my decimals, I would have 9 times 1/100th, and then I would have 8 times 1/1000th. So I didn't do those there in the middle, but we did one of these early on, that very first one we did. Same situation, and then it just asks you to write that in word format. Some of you detest that. Just know that word format is where you actually write it out. So I would write out 21,900, and I would write this out, all the way out, just using words. I'm not really sure. They must think that one of the Keebler elves is going to write that in there because there's just not enough room to do all of that. So, okay, here's 7. What is the value of the underlined digit in the number 4,509 and 806 thousandths? Okay, well, I'm going to look and I can see that this 6 is in the thousandths spot. So that's the first part. It says, what is the value of the underlined digit? So that part, I could say the value is 6 thousandths. So there's the value. And then it says, explain your answer. Well, this would be a pretty simple answer. You would just say the 6 is in the thousandths spot, which means there are 6 thousandths. That's kind of one of those Captain Obvious sort of questions. But if you were asked this question on a test, you would respectfully answer and just tell them why that's the value, because there's a 6 in the thousandths spot, so that means there are 6 thousandths. All right, here's another one with placing these in order from least to greatest. Please be super careful with this least to greatest business. I still underline when I see this because folks will trick you up and they will say greatest to least. It makes me nuts. But just be really careful. All right, and I'm going to write these out so that I can line the decimals up here. Okay. So looking at these, I know I'm going from least to greatest. And let me get a different color here. I can quickly see that I have 2 of these that have a 5 for the whole number. So I know one of those is going to have to be first. So let me start comparing those. There's a 5 in the ones place, so those are the same. So let me move over. There's a 9 in the tenths place and a 3 in the tenths place there. So that means that this one is going to be the smallest. A 3 in the tenths place is smaller than a 9. So this is going to be the first one. This is going to be 1, and that's going to be 2. All right, I'm going to mark these out because I already dealt with those guys. Okay, now I'm going to look at the other 2. They both have a 9 in the ones place. So I know they're going to come next. I'm just going to cross those out because those are the same. When I look to the next place value, this one's a 3 in the tenths, and that's a 5 in the tenths. That's a difference in 3 dimes versus 5 dimes. I know 3 dimes is less, so that one's going to come next. And then the 5 dimes would be the most. So then you would just rewrite these very carefully from least to greatest. Okay. Next one here, once again, we're comparing those place values. Write them out if you need to. In fact, you do need to. So look at those and see what is going on here. This tells me I don't have any whole numbers, so there are no whole numbers. I don't have any tenths. For both of these, I have 2 hundredths. And then here it tells me I have 0 thousandths. Well, up here I don't have any thousandths either. So these are actually equal. It does say write to explain. Here I could quickly say 2 hundredths is equal to 20 thousandths. Because even though we read them differently, they have the same value. All right, and last one. Shade in the amount on each hundredths chart, then use the symbols greater than, less than, or equal to compare. So this one asks me for 40 hundredths. Well, if I look, I see it's asking me for 4 tenths. So I know that these are in sticks of tens. So I just did 4 sticks of 10. It's also the same as 40 hundredths. Because if I counted these individual blocks, there would be 40 of them. All right, and then the other one asked me for 9 hundredths. Well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's not even a full tenth stick. So I know that this is going to read like this. All right. Just don't get tricked with these. Remember that if it's whatever number is in the tenths place, you're going to have sticks. Whatever number is in the hundredths place, you're going to have little pieces. Okay. So we are going to move, and I told you we're probably not going to do all of these, but we were covering 2 standards today. Because these are very similar. This is the 4th standard. If you're following along, this says shade 47 hundredths on the hundredths chart. Then round 47 hundredths to the nearest tenth. Okay, well, let's look at this. So here's 47 hundredths right here. I can easily do this by saying there is a 4 in the tenths spot. That means that I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 sticks of tenths, and then there's a 7 in the ones in the hundredths. So I'm going to have 7 little hundredths. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The question asked me to round to the nearest tenth. Well, look at this. I almost have this tenth over here filled up. So if I was rounding this, I would round up and finish off that, which would give me 5 tenths. Okay, the next question asks us about rounding to the nearest tenth. So it asks me to round 1 69 thousandths to the nearest tenth. Okay, I always underline the place value I'm looking at. So there's the tenths place. I look next door. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, let it soar. This is more than 5, so it says to this guy, you need to soar, and it's going to go up 1. everything to the right gets frozen. So this would round, so 1 and 69 thousandths rounded to the nearest tenth would be 1 and 1/10. Down here, round, let's see here, round 1 and 989 thousandths to the nearest hundredth. Once again, guys, really important to actually write these out and underline what you're looking at. I'm looking at this one, so I go next door. 5 or more, let it soar. So this 8 is going to go up 1. It's going to turn into a 9. This guy is going to get frozen. So 1 and 989 thousandths rounded to the nearest hundredth would be 1 and 99 hundredths. If it tells you to round to the nearest hundredth, the hundredths place should be the last place you have here. It's just a way to check. Okay. If my rounded number is 9 and 7/10, what could my original number be? Well, so I have 9 and 7/10 here. Well, let me think about this. What would round to 9 and 7/10? If I went down just one place value and I made this 9 and let's say 69 hundredths, would that round to 9 and 7/10? Yes, it would. There's a lot of things that could round, so you could have lots of different answers here. You might have 9 and 65 hundredths. That would round to 9 and 7/10. You might have 9 and 66 hundredths, 9 and 67 hundredths, 9 and 68 hundredths, or 9 and 69 hundredths. Those things would all round up to 9 and 7 hundredths. Tenths. 9 and 7/10. Oh my goodness. Okay. You might have gone all the way out to the thousandths place to do it, but that would have made things a little complicated. So this one, they didn't give you very specific directions, but that's kind of what they were talking about. And you really just had to think backwards there. Okay. Here's a number line one. Use the number line below to put a dot at 88 hundredths. Use the number line to explain why you would round 88 hundredths to 9/10 instead of 8/10. All right, so the first thing it said was to put a dot on 88 hundredths, which is right there. And they ask you to explain why. Well, this is another one of those Captain Obvious sort of answers. You would just say because 88 hundredths is closer to 9/10. Here's 9/10 right here. You would say it's closer to 9/10 than over here to 8/10. So that would be a pretty simple explanation there. Here's another rounding one. This one asks us to round to the nearest hundredth. All right, well, first of all, let me find the hundredths place, which is right there. I look next door. It's a 7. So 5 or more, let it soar. It tells this 0 to turn into a 1, and then this 7 is now frozen. So my final answer here would be 245 and 1/100th. But look, they asked me to round to my hundredths. The last decimal I have here is hundredths. So just double check yourself. Oops. All right, next one down here. That's sliding away from me. What is the value of the underlined digit in the number 5 and 873 thousandths? Round to the place of the underlined digit. Okay, so they're asking two questions here, which you've really got to be careful with. So first of all, let me write the number here. So they're asking me about this 8. What is the value of that 8? That 8 is in the tenths spot. So it has a value of 8/10. Then they ask me to round. So they ask me to round to the underlined digit. So I look next door. This is a 7 over here. So 5 or more, let it soar. It tells that 8 that it should be a 9. And then everything over here gets frozen. So it said round to the place of the underlined digit. So I rounded to the tenths place. So my answer would be 5 9/10. Okay, if I rounded my number, if my rounded number is 1 4/10, what could the original number have been? Okay, so 1 4/10. This is another one that's just kind of some creative thinking. So your number could have been 1 39/100, 1 38/100, 1 37, 36, 35. It could have been any of those numbers. Those would all round to 1 4/10. It could also have been 1 41/100, 1 42/100, 1 43/100, or 1 44/100. So all of those different things would round to 1 4/10 if we were rounding to the tenths place. All of these over here would round up, so this 3 would turn to a 4. All of these over here would round down, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. These would round, and this 4 here would stay the same. Okay. Here's another one. Rounding. This one is round 1 9/1000 to the nearest 100th. Well, there's my 100th. So the 9, 5 or more, let it soar. So it tells that 0 to go to 1. And then this 9 gets frozen. So I have 1 1/100th. Well, let me double check. Here's hundredths. Yep, hundredths. I'm in the right spot. Okay, and then this last one here. Draw 72 hundredths on the hundredths chart. Then round 72 hundredths to the nearest tenth. Well, let's start here with 72 hundredths. I know the 7 is in the tenths place, so I'm going to do 7/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I know that this 2 is in the hundredths place, so I need 1, 2. So 2 little hundredths there. It asks me to round to the nearest tenth. Well, I can easily see here that there are not many hundredths here. There's not enough to make a whole nother tenth. If there's 4 or less, I can't round up. So this would actually round to 7/10. All right, guys. So there is a review for our first grading period of all of the different skills that we have done. We looked through Standard 4. We looked through Standard 3. And then on Monday and Wednesday, we looked through 1 and 2. So this is all the information from the first grading cycle. If you have any questions about this, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Hope you guys have an awesome Friday, and I will see you back live on Monday. I'm looking forward to it. See you later, guys.